What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Adamas Project. My name is Brandon Burns. I'm here with a incredible guest. I think she's going to blow you guys away. And Mel, I'm just gonna let you introduce yourself really quick for the people who might not know you. What's the 30-second elevator pitch of who is Mel?
Thank you so much. So grateful to be here. Well, my name is Melissa Roshan. That's my actual first name. So I go by Melro for short. I am just a grateful soul to be here on this planet doing this work. And that work is really just to up level the lives of others. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Melro, you are one of those people that you have an infectious energy, right? And like you're one of the very few people that you can feel energy through a text message, right? And that's kind of hard to do. Like usually if it's a phone call or a Zoom or an audio message, you're like, okay, I can kind of I can feel out this person's energy. You're one of those people that even through text, you can tell you are super positive. Like you just give off positive energy. You have positive interactions with a lot of people. I've seen it on social media, right? Is that automatic for you or is that a conscious choice?
Wow, I love this question. I would say it's a bit of both, right? A lot of times I think humans, our automatic state of being as a human being, it can be one that's very ego led and driven. And so we have to consciously kind of silence out the ego, put love, put God, put others first. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, as I'm continuing to grow, it is becoming more of a natural state of being. But at the same time, there are times when life be lifing, right? And
Mm,
people are annoying. And so I have to consciously remember the choice that I've made to be who I am and to show up in the world in the way in which I do. So, yeah,
yeah.
a bit
No,
of
I love
both.
that. What are some of the practices that you do either to like you talked about personal growth and the more that you become that person, right? Then the energy that you give off is almost a natural byproduct of it. What do you do? What are some of the practices that you do to continue to become that person? I remember listening to Eric Thomas speak one time, and it was one of the funniest things I've ever heard a speaker say because he's known for being all serious and just super animated on stage. And I saw him up there one time. He was talking to a group of entrepreneurs, and he said, "The reason your business isn't growing is because nobody likes you." And he said it with a perfectly straight face. And I was on the floor in the back of the room, just rolling laughing because I was like, it's so blunt that it was hilarious, but it's true. Like if you don't give out the right energy, if people don't want to spend time with you, if they don't like being around you, then personally and professionally those relationships are going to suffer. So what are some things that you do to be this high energy individual?
Thank you. Love Eric Thomas, by the way. So, and yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that point for sure. And I love that he is just super direct and honest with folk because people cannot be fed well off of lies. It's not sustainable. So,
It's the
um,
truth.
you know, it's a number of things, and it's a number of things for this reason. So, I grew up in foster care. I was born into foster care by way of a 13-and-a-half-year-old girl and spent, basically my entire life in the foster care system experiencing so many layers of trauma. And I knew that my life was meant for so much more than my lived experiences, but I knew that the wound might have been someone else's fault, but ultimately healing would be my responsibility. And goodness gracious, it has been a very
Mm.
heavy responsibility. And so when I decided that I was going to be a cycle breaker, be the one in my family that says, yo, certain things have ran in my family, they're going to run out with me. Um, I knew that it was going to take a series of those decisions that I mentioned. So the first one being is I am a huge advocate for forgiveness, practicing forgiveness not just toward others but forgiveness of ourselves. Things that, ways in which we could have shown up in much more powerful ways and we did not, or even extending that grace toward others. Because when we do that, I believe that we are calling all of our power back from places that it might have been just unwillingly taken away from us, or ways in which we've actually given it away. No matter what, we have to call all of our power back. And when we do that, we are more powerful, not
Mm.
powerless. Um, so it is the constant practicing of forgiveness and showing grace, and um, really just allowing love to take residence in my heart. And so what does that look like? Well, I'm in a constant state of emptying out. So I am a journal groupie. I love to journal. I do love to meditate, right? Joe Dispenza is one of my favorite people to
Yeah.
listen to in terms of, like, yeah, and Abraham Hicks and all of the things. So I'm constantly learning how to silence my mind and empty out the clutter. Huge reader as well. I am, I love reading. So I typically read about 3 books a month. And there are times where I will actually read the same book 3 times a month. So right now I have just finished up Young Pueblo's lighter book. Amazing, but it's really talking about this very thing that I'm referring to, is of emptying yourself out and packing lighter. So the journaling, the practicing, the forgiveness, the showing others grace, but I'm also big on practicing radical self-acceptance, and taking accountability, Brandon, for what belongs to me, and not
Mm.
taking accountability for what doesn't. But a lot of times we hold on to this victim story. This person did that to me, and oh, woe is me, rather than wow is God, or wow is life. And so I am very big on just, when I'm in this meditative state and the thoughts are passing, but I'm also examining what's coming up for me within my own self, that's revealing to me heavier parts and darker parts of my character that are not serving myself anymore. So it's all the things, right? And then I'm also big on grounding in nature. So I live in Ohio, so I live around nothing but nature. And though it is cold right now, I am very intentional about getting outside every single day in some capacity and taking in the air and grounding myself. Another fact about me is I am autistic. So there is a spectrum of autism, right? So we have the cusp and then we have the most extreme. I'm in the middle. And so knowing that about myself is not something where it's like, oh, I'm autistic, so I can't do this or I can't do that. It is, okay, my brain processes this way. My brain needs silence. My brain needs solitude. My brain needs peace. My whole entire being needs to be able to ground. I need to be able to journal. I need to be able to have these mechanisms in place so I do not become like the people that have caused me harm. This is how I maintain my power. This is how I cultivate my peace. And this is absolutely necessary because the charge on my life has been to bless others. And I do not ever want to be one of those people that I'm out here being fraudulent, talking about living a certain way, but I am actually not living that way. And I believe that God responds to your truth, not to your lies. So
Mm.
I am really this person because this is what I preach, and I know that it works. Yeah.
Goodness. Hey, really quick, for anybody who's listening right now, that was a masterclass on finding inner peace. Like, for real, go back and re-listen to the last 4 minutes or so, because that is a step-by-step blueprint. And to anybody who might have an objection to that, um, that used to be me, right? Like, a lot of the things that you're talking about right now, the journaling, the self-acceptance, I used to be, not even that long ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I was the one who was saying, well, that's soft. It doesn't work. It's all about results, 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 push harder, you know. And I think that the thing that changed that broken mentality for me was seeing enough people get real results with the methodology that you just laid out. Like, we're going to get more, a little bit deeper into your story in a minute here, but you're listening to an individual who has been through so much in their life, right? And if I don't want to use the cliche, if she can do it, you can do it, but it really is the truth. Like, if these are strategies that are working in the real world for somebody who's been through the experiences that you've been through, it's going to work for other people too. So I just want people to keep that in mind. You said a couple of really, really impactful statements that were like bite sized, but there was so much depth to them. So I want to ask you about just a couple of those right now. You said taking ownership over what belongs to you and what doesn't. What's the difference? What does belong to you and what doesn't belong to you?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So, um, and going back to that, when I'm talking about taking ownership, and being accountable. So, what's recently popped up for me is, I experienced a argument with my son, and I could have gone to, well, I'm your mom. You need to respect me just because I'm your mom. There's no reason for you to be responding to me this way. But I had to really sit with myself and realize that, okay, he is responding this way, but you have to also remember you were a teen mother. You have to also remember the programming and conditioning that he experienced, being born to a teenager and y'all living in a homeless shelter, right? So the way in which you think that he should process, you have to also understand what his intake has been. So I had to accept full accountability for the role that I played in his life and have played currently in his life. And really just say, well, then some of this responsibility belongs to me, right? But then there's other stuff like that work that he has to do that doesn't belong to me, right? So I
Mm.
am not taking that on. And the difference is, for me at least, and what I believe is that, what do you have control over? What were you responsible for, right? What did you do? What did you say? How did you process? How did you show up? And what can you learn from the situation? And you also have to ask yourself, is this a cycle that you're in? Because if it is a cycle, then it is probably you. And that
Mm.
hurts, right? Because it's like, no, but no, it's yes, love, it is, because nothing goes away until it teaches you what you need to know. And the characters might change, the setting might change, the time period might change. But if it's the same situation, you'll know that it also belongs to you, and you have to accept accountability for that. I will show you all that I did buy a white planner for myself for my birthday, right? And the reason why I bought a white planner is when I was in prayer and meditation, I heard God say that, Mel, it's time to tell a new story. It's time to write a new narrative. You've been talking about your foster care journey. You've been talking about this. You've been talking about the same thing for years. But there's more that we want you. There's more that I want you to say. There's more that you have to say. And we want you to create new, fresh experiences. Like, you've done the trauma, you've done the trauma, you've done the drama. Now it's time to get your PhD in triumph. And so, by you up leveling and you changing your internal being, is how you write a new narrative and write a new story. So, the white journal represents a new beginning for me, because as we begin to change, we are like literally new iterations of ourselves. And it's important that we're getting rid of the old, extracting the medicine or the lessons from the past experiences, but also letting it go. You get that medicine, you get your lessons, and you create new experiences for yourself. Yeah,
What do you feel like that new chapter God wants you to write is? What's the new message that needs to be shared?
for sure. Thank you. That love is real, that love saves, and that love is available to us all, and that love is who we are.
Hmm. Do you
And if
feel
you
like, go ahead, go ahead.
if you know who you are and you know whose you are, then it'll be a
Hmm.
lot more difficult for you, one, to be walking around in this world any old kind of way, because you have a very clear knowing of who you are and whose you are. And there are certain things that you won't tolerate for yourself as well.
Yeah. Is that part of the mentality behind what, in my mind, I view as taking responsibility for fixing something you didn't break, right? And when I say that, I mean, obviously there were certain circumstances that you couldn't control, born to a 13-and-a-half-year-old mother, foster care system, I believe. By the way, Melrose has a phenomenal TED Talk. It's on melrosevoice.com. So you got all our videos and stuff there. You can check out her foundation. Make sure that you go check that out if you haven't seen it already. But I believe 23 different foster homes, right?
Yeah.
So that's not a situation that you necessarily had control over. I think to me that's where the concept of extreme ownership, extreme accountability, it starts to break down at that point, because it's like, okay, what are you doing as a 6 year old that makes this situation happen? Nothing. You don't have anything to do with that. So how is it that idea of, I have to become this person who is able to forgive, who is able to love the world, who is able to make peace internally so that I can spread that externally? Like, what's the driving factor behind being able to take that ownership that you're talking about, that says, hey, I didn't deserve this. I didn't do anything to get here. But you know what? This is the situation that I have to deal with. How am I moving forward? Like, where does that come from? Because I think there's so many people who are stuck right there.
So my answer is might be a bit difficult for some to process and to receive, and I understand that. This is my own opinion, and this is what has worked for my own understanding, for
Hmm.
my own life path. I believe, Brandon, within every fiber of my being, that I chose this life path. I willingly accepted this life path that God has put me on. And though it has been really difficult, I've been called for this.
Hmm.
No breaking, no breakthrough. No
Hmm.
breakthrough, no breakthrough in my life, no breakthrough for others. So that's why though I get tired, yes, though I, don't like all parts of the journey, it's been very difficult. I still say yes. Yes, God. Yes, God. And I will say yes until my last breath, because I understand that that's part of my life path, that is my mission, to serve in the way that I'm serving. Didn't say I always like it. I don't. It's difficult, but I'm grateful nonetheless for this charge on my life, and I take it very seriously. The reason why I said that my answer would be difficult is because if we have youth that are listening, then the youth might be sitting there saying, so you are literally telling me that I signed up for X, Y, and Z, the beatings, the trauma. You're telling me that I chose this. What I'm telling you is to find your truth, and whatever resonates for you and helps you heal, find that.
Hmm.
But for
Yeah.
me, that's where I've landed. And that's what's given me joy and peace in every part of my journey. They talk about praising your way through every circumstance. The praise comes from the gratitude comes from the knowing that God has you, and that every moment that you're in is literally a series of God orchestrating something greater for your life if you choose to do the work. Now, sometimes with free will, that's not always the case. We're out of alignment. But I'm talking about
Hmm.
when you're in direct alignment, it's all part of the plan.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I hear a lot of faith in that answer. Like, that's one of those answers. It doesn't work without an incredible amount of faith from your part. And I think that in many ways, faith is a decision. I hear a lot of um, just philosophical thought in that. I believe it was Nietzsche that said, um, to live is to suffer, but to survive is to find meaning in that suffering, right? So no matter what your story looks like, whether it is super extreme or whether it is, not as dramatic per se, it's still your life, and there's still going to be pain. There's still going to be sacrifice. There's still going to be suffering involved no matter what. That's a precondition of the human experience. But how do you find meaning in that, I think, is really what determines people who are beaten down by life versus people who are able to create something beautiful out of that. And I guess that leads me to my next question. I interviewed somebody last year, powerful, powerful woman. Her name is Candace Mama. And her incredible story. Her father was brutally murdered in South Africa as a part of apartheid. And she travels around the world speaking. And I mean, she works with governments of nations, and just incredible work. And all of her work is based around the concept of forgiveness. So she actually met the guy who murdered her father, and he was a notorious individual and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it, I get a lot of the same energy from hearing your story, forgiveness, right? And it seems like that forgiveness has been able to lead both of you into a meaning, into a purpose, into a calling that otherwise would have been closed off, right? Because you, both of you are people who have every right to be angry, right? Like you have every right to say, you know what, I didn't sign up for this. This is crazy. Like, what? Why is this happening to me? That victimhood mentality. But you've both turned that into something that's very purpose filled. You've both turned that into something where you say, you know what, this is what God assigned for me. I'm here. I'm willing to accept it, and I'm willing to turn this into something far more beautiful than it even could have been had I had a quote unquote normal life, right? So my question for you is, what's the difference? Like, what's the difference between the people who just get beaten down by life circumstances versus the people like yourself who are able to take that and turn it into something truly incredible and borderline transcendent?
Thank you. Thank you for sharing her story too. That's beautiful. Um, I think the major difference here is it's the power of choice. Because one could say, well, it would be very difficult for me to get to where you are or to forgive because what they did was so extreme or what happened was so hurtful. Yes, it is difficult, but it's also difficult staying in bondage. So you have to choose
Mm,
your heart.
yeah.
And check this out, no judgment for whatever you choose, but know this, I don't like to say but, and know this, whatever you are not changing, you are choosing. So if you're truly tired of living in bondage, then you will make decisions that are indicative of you wanting to live in freedom. And sometimes that is going to be doing the hard thing, choosing the hard thing, which is to forgive, which is to have those difficult conversations, which is to lean into the many different healing modalities that exist. Talk-based therapy is one of many,
Mm,
which means maybe taking a season of your life and not even dating so that you can really not be projecting any possible mother father wounds onto someone else, and just being in communion with yourself as you are on this path of learning to love yourself. It's all difficult. I'm also someone that lost 90 something pounds since 2021, and it was difficult being at that size. And it tasted amazing being able to eat four Reese's peanut butter cups and uh, you know drinking Dr. Pepper and like all of those things. Um, but it was hard, right? Being
mm,
sick all the time as well. But then it was also difficult being able to do the work to shed the weight, not just the physical weight, but the mindset that was keeping me in bondage. But I decided to choose my heart through the power of choice, and here we are. And honestly, I'm constantly in a state of becoming. I believe that our finish line is always moving. Right now, the chapter that God has me in is completely healing my codependent issues because they are still there. So I decided to start going to AA. Though I am not a substance abuser, there is a lot of information that's helpful for those who have been parented by substance abusers or who have loved substance abusers to understand that they are codependent. So I say all that to say that sometimes people will hear me and they're like, "You're so powerful," and I'm very thankful for that. I give God all the glory. Um, you don't have to be perfect in order to be powerful. Both can exist at the
mm,
same time. And so that's what we talk about, the radical self acceptance, the showing yourself grace. But being humble enough to know that, yo, you got to continue to do your work. Because the moment you feel like all right, I'm good, I'm good. Nah, there's always something for us to examine. Yeah.
You know what's funny? I noticed this about your TED Talk as well, right? You have a very eloquent professional style of speaking, and there's like 5% of the time where it's like, oh, the real Melro just broke through. You're like, yo, you got to keep working. Come on, fam, come on. Figure. And I love that. I love that. Hey,
Thank you
let me
so
ask
much.
you this.
Yeah,
Obviously, there was a lot of trauma early on growing up.
yeah.
You had a comeback story that was pretty miraculous. You got discovered. Tell me just a little bit about that process before we wrap up here. What was the flip side of that like, going from basically having nothing? I mean, you talk about a rags to riches story. You're it. What was that whole process like?
Oh gosh, thank you. Yeah, so I was discovered as a model and, ended up modeling at a really high level in New York and was on all these different magazine covers around all these different celebrities. And the experience was, I mean, I still had nothing, right? I was on
Mm,
magazine covers, but I was still like battling with bulimia. I was, severely broken in a domestic violence riddled marriage. I mean, I had reached a worldly form of success, but I was
mm,
still very much broken and not
mm,
happy. I mean, at the height of my modeling career, I was on a psych ward. And where were the celebrities at that, I used to go and
mm,
party with? None of them were around. It was just me and my issues. I traded a Chanel blouse for a hospital gown. And that's when I realized, yeah, you have work to do, sis. You have got to do the work so that you can rise. So I actually stopped modeling for a very long time because I wanted to understand what it meant to actually be beautiful. And I realized it had nothing to do with aesthetics. I also realized that success has nothing really to do with it there's some for yes, when you have achieved certain things in this world via your career, yes, that is a form of success. But for me and mine, beauty is refusing to become like who has hurt you. Success is being the cycle breaker in your family, period. And then going off
mm.
and creating work that is sustainable and healing for others. So I am still modeling, I am still speaking, and the real Melro has constantly popped up these days. But the success is in who I am becoming for sure, and how
Mm.
I live my life when no one is
Mm.
around. I take that very, very seriously. Yeah.
I
And I just
love that
wanted to say
definition.
really quick to
Yes.
those that check out the TED Talk, um, thank you. And I have sometimes it's hard for me to look at that talk because I know that I've evolved so much and there, I'm just like, but at the same time, I'm like, thank you so much. But I wanted to really say this that back in the TED Talk days, it was and la 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 and da 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 and yada da. It was very poised and put together. These days, no, absolutely not. I know it, I know the format of which I am going to speak, but y'all gonna get this heart. We're not
Mm.
rehearsing. You're not getting a script. You are getting this heart. You're getting what God wants you to have in this moment. And that has only happened because I have been a willing participant in writing new narratives and not using old information that was cultivated from an old state of being, an old state of mind. As I am constantly up leveling, so too is my messaging. It always has the same base, which is love and resiliency and all the things. But there's some nuances that happen because I'm changing. So thank
I
you.
love that. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that definition of success. The success is in who I'm becoming. And I think that's important because a lot of people are under this assumption, this false assumption, that as soon as I get financial success or, earthly, worldly success, that is going to all of a sudden make me the person that I want to be. It's going to make me feel the way that I want to feel, right?
Yes.
And it's false, and you can spend your whole life building your way up to something like that, and then ending up almost in a state of depression because you're disappointed at the results that it brings because it isn't everything that you imagined that it would be. But I
Yes.
think that when you redefine success like that, that the true success is in the journey of who you become in the process. Now
Mm,
you know without a shadow of a doubt that there is nothing lost. Everything that
mm,
you've been through, everything that you're going through, all the growth, all the development, it contributes to that definition of success where maybe it doesn't in a more shallow definition of success. So I absolutely love that. Melro,
yay.
I know you got to run. I got to ask you this, right? let's say 16-year-old Melro. If you could go back and give her one piece of advice, what would it be?
So
Easy question, right?
it's like I want to answer it in two different ways. So I'm going to go by what my spirit is guiding me to say, and that is you can. I can go
Mm,
back. I can go and talk to the 16-year-old Melro, and this is how I know this
mm,
to be true. Time is 100% an illusion. It is. There is no going back, there is no forward, there always is just the now. All right. So, with that being said, there is also an iteration of me and
mm,
of you, of your younger selves that exists somewhere. We could say it's in another metaverse. It exists because you are energy, because you're a soul and you never die, right? When they talk about inner child healing, what they're telling us is that that iteration that still exists somewhere with God, just somewhere, you can send healing. You can literally send healing to your younger self right now. Think about this. It's just a thought, right? I could be wrong, but I just want y'all to follow me for a second. Remember when you were a little kid? Remember when you were 16? You had a voice that was saying, don't hang out with that person. Don't go down that alley. Don't get in that car. You're going to be fine. Don't worry about it. Or you experience deja vu, like, yo, I remember this, right? What if I just suggested that it was your older self, literally either A, recalling a memory, or B, your older self is right now talking to you? So I'm just going to do it live. 16-year-old self, Mel, you are worthy. You are valuable. You are not your lived experiences. And you are not a foster child. You are a child that lives in foster care. You're going to be fine. You are fine. God loves you so much. And I need you to continue to hang on. And I thank you for your resiliency.
mm,
And so I know this works because I do this work often on myself. So by my bedside is a picture of me. I was 6 and I listen to what my 6-year-old self has to tell me, and I also talk to my 6-year-old self and
mm,
do the inner child healing work this way. Why do we do it? Because a lot of us are walking around with little inner children that are raging upset. You got adults out here walking around like they're literally just in preschool, throwing temper tantrums. They need to sit down and do that inner child healing work. It works, and it's your responsibility to do it. And why not? You deserve that. Now, some of you might be, saying, okay, she lost me at the metaverse stuff. I don't believe. You don't have to believe it. It's okay. We're all on our own journeys. But I would say that at least just consider it. And
mm.
even if you don't believe in it, just today, what if you were to just sit down in silence and pull up your younger self, your 16-year-old self in your mind and just send them so much love? What if you were to just do that? I guarantee if you consistently do that, that you will experience more freedom, more peace, and more healing and more love. So thank you for allowing me to answer in that esoteric way. I am a deep thinker. You, if y'all know who Joe Dispenza is, then what I said just makes sense. But yeah, I appreciate it so much. And this is why I give God glory. And this is why I'm grateful for the path. Because had I not gone through all of those experiences, Brandon, I would not be who I am. I'm telling you, in 2011, I was literally just modeling, um, going to parties, smoking weed, being around people I had no business being around. And I was so broken and so lost. And had I not gone through all of this, it wouldn't, I wouldn't be who I am in this present moment. And this interview would not be unfolding the way that it is if I wasn't who I am. So I am so grateful for everything.
I love
And
that.
my goal is really to help others find gratitude in their journey, because when you get to that point, that's when you experience the peace. And Brandon, I just want to say this to you. Thank you very much for creating a platform for people to be able to share their voices. I am so deeply full of gratitude for your selflessness. I see you. Thank you for seeing others. And yeah, this is like one of the best podcasts too. So I'm so honored that you allowed me to be on it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I
Mhm.
appreciate. I told you she's the most positive person I know. I told you all that in the
Uh,
beginning. Just to double click on one quick point before we let you go. I love what you said about even if you don't fully believe all the way in a lot of the techniques and the things that she's talking about right now, it doesn't matter. Try it, because if it's worked for one person, chances are it might work for. It used to I crack me up. I used to be a personal trainer when I was in college. That was how I paid my bills when I was going to school, and I loved it when a client who had never worked out before would come to me, who's been working out for like a decade, and be like, "Hey, are you sure that this exercise you want me to do is going to help me? I don't believe that it's gonna. I don't care if you believe it or not. Do it, and let's see what happens. Give it a shot. The worst you can lose is 10, 15 minutes of your time. The most you can gain is a complete adjustment in the trajectory of your entire life and breaking patterns and cycles that you've held on for decades. So give it a shot. Hey, Melro, where can people find you?
Thank you. And before I answer that, I just want to say you cannot win until you begin. So at least begin. Don't throw something out and, oh, that's not going to work for me. Remember, that's programming that has convinced you that that's not going to work. What would happen if you just gave yourself, as Brandon said, a chance? So you can find me on Instagram. It's my first name, Melissa Roshan. So it is Melissa Roshan. You may also find me on my website, which is www.melrosevoice.com. So MELROS and then voice.com.
I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here and for sharing all this insight with us. Your story is truly, truly inspirational. You are truly, truly inspirational. And I can't thank you enough for sharing all these thoughts with our listeners. And I wish you nothing but the best in
Thank you.
speaking and everything else that's to come.
Mm.
I sense a book on the way with this. I think this new white journal is going to turn into a book. That's just what I'm feeling. I don't know if you received that, but that's what I'm
I'm in the
feeling.
process of editing 2 books. Thank you. Thank you so
Let's
much, brother.
go. Let's go. All
Yes,
right,
let's
everybody.
get it.
Thank you so much for
Thank
tapping
you.
in. As always, if you listen to this, don't sit around and say, that's deep. Go out there and do something with the information. Love y'all. Appreciate y'all. You're worth it. You're valuable. You can do it. And we'll see you on the next episode. Peace.
Peace.